Yesterday, the world celebrated as Artemis II splashdown in the Pacific. NASA calls the mission a perfect success. But while the crew was celebrating their return, a leaked data packet from the Lunar Far Side is telling a much darker story. For 30 minutes, while the astronauts were in radio silence behind the moon, the cameras weren't just recording craters. They were tracking something that moved. Something that hasn't been seen since 1972. And it wasn't human. The celebration you saw on the news yesterday was curated. When Reid Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen stepped onto that recovery ship, they looked like heroes, but they also looked like people who had seen something they weren't supposed to. To understand why, you have to look at the April 6th flyby. As the Orion capsule swung around the Lunar Far Side, it crossed the shadow line. This is where the bulk of the moon acts as a literal shield, blocking every radio wave, every Wi-Fi signal, and every word from mission control. For 30 minutes, the crew was more alone than any human being in history. NASA told us the crew spent that time taking scenic photos of the Aitken Basin. And they did. But it's the photos they didn't put in the press kit that are currently causing a silent panic at the Johnson Space Center. While the astronauts were staring out those windows, the Orion's high-sensitivity infrared cameras were scanning the surface below. At 7:02 p.m., just as they passed over the Aitken Basin, one of the deepest, darkest holes in the solar system, the sensors didn't just pick up cold, dead rock, yet they registered a massive thermal spike. We're talking about a heat signature shaped like a perfect equilateral triangle, pulsing at exactly 1.5 Hertz. In a place where the temperature sits at a constant, bone-chilling -280 degrees Fahrenheit, something was generating enough energy to light up the Orion sensors like a Christmas tree. But it's not just the heat, it's the meteoroid impact flashes. In the official report, NASA mentioned that the crew observed rare meteoroid impacts during the flight. But the leaked telemetry suggests these weren't random rocks hitting the surface. They were localized, synchronized flashes of light coming from inside the craters. As Victor Glover looked down, he described the surface as the gray that blends into the blackness. But then his heart rate monitor spiked. For 12 seconds, his vitals went through the roof. Why? Because for those 12 seconds, the Orion wasn't the only thing in orbit. The leaked data packet contains a high-speed burst of frames captured by the craft's navigation cameras. In the pitch black of the lunar night, something was silhouetted against the faint Earthshine. It wasn't a satellite. It wasn't a piece of space junk. It was a massive, non-reflective craft moving in a perfect counter-orbit to Orion, essentially shadowing the mission. As the astronauts moved back toward the light, regaining contact with Earth, the first thing Christina Koch radioed back was, "It is so great to hear from Earth again." To the public, it sounded like relief from the silence. But to those who have seen the unedited transcripts, it sounds like someone who was just let out of a room with a predator. NASA wants us to focus on the splashdown. They want us to look at the parachutes and the smiling faces. But they aren't talking about why the Orion's heat shield showed unexpected scorching on the side that wasn't even facing the atmosphere during re-entry. They aren't talking about the 30 minutes of data that is currently being scrubbed for security. And most importantly, they aren't talking about the signal the astronauts heard in their headsets while they were on the dark side. It wasn't static. It was a voice. And it was calling them by name. The most unsettling thing about the Artemis II mission wasn't what happened in the void. It was what happened when the data came home. When the Orion capsule was hauled onto the deck of the USS San Diego, the recovery team noticed something off. A series of microscopic, crystalline etchings were found on the exterior hatch. Patterns that looked less like space debris damage and more like a mathematical sequence. But the real bombshell dropped when a whistleblower from the Deep Space Communication Wing leaked the red file audio from the blackout period. During those 30 minutes of radio silence, the crew wasn't just observing the moon. They were being communicated with. We've been led to believe the moon is a silent tomb, a graveyard of dust and old Apollo flags. But the Artemis sensors picked up a low-frequency hum vibrating through the hull of the spacecraft. It wasn't solar wind. It wasn't equipment hum. It was a modulated handshake signal. The leaked audio reveals a moment that will give you chills. As the Orion passed over the Shackleton Crater, a voice, distorted, echoing, sounding like it was being pulled through 1,000 years of static, broke through the internal comms. It didn't speak English. It didn't speak any known language. But the AI-driven translation software at NASA allegedly flagged the pattern as a vectored greeting. Essentially, something on the far side was acknowledging our return. Not as a welcome, but as a warning. Think about the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter photos we've seen for years. They show a barren wasteland. But the Artemis II cameras were equipped with high-spectrum LiDAR, laser scanning, that can see through the regolith. The raw data suggests that the far side isn't just rock. There are massive, hollowed-out voids beneath the surface. Subterranean cities, the size of Manhattan. These aren't natural lava tubes. The LiDAR showed reinforced walls, 90-degree angles, and what looked like massive heat exchange vents. This explains why the Artemis III landing site has been moved 3 times in the last 6 months. NASA isn't looking for water ice. They are looking for a way to land without disturbing whoever, or whatever, has been living in those lunar voids since before the first human looked up at the sky. But here is the part that keeps the mission planners up at night. During the final 5 minutes of the blackout, the Orion's navigation system experienced a phantom command. The ship's thrusters fired for 3 seconds, unprompted by the crew or the onboard computer. For those 3 seconds, the ship was steered slightly off course, pointing the high-gain cameras directly into the mouth of the Shackleton Crater. In that split second, the camera captured a massive, shimmering dome structure that seemed to flicker in and out of the visible spectrum. It looked like a cloaking field failing under the intensity of the Orion's scanning lasers. The image was immediately encrypted by a burn-level security protocol. Christina Koch's heart rate didn't just spike. It stayed at 140 beats per minute for the rest of the transit. Why is the government suddenly in such a rush to build a lunar gateway station? Why are we spending billions to put a permanent base on a rock we haven't touched in 50 years? Because Artemis II confirmed our worst fear. We aren't going to the moon to explore. We're going back because they told us we have to report in. The perfect mission was a lie. Artemis II didn't just prove we could go back to the moon, it proved that the moon is already occupied. We are currently witnessing a global space race that isn't about prestige, it's about defense. The things seen in the dark side shadows are no longer just conspiracy theories. They are documented anomalies that NASA is currently working overtime to scrub from the history books. The question isn't whether there is life on the moon. The question is, what happens when that life decides it's tired of being watched? The footage is being deleted as we speak, and the official reports are being rewritten. If you want to stay ahead of the blackout and see the evidence they're trying to bury, you need to hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications. We are tracking the Artemis III telemetry in real time, and you won't want to miss what we find next. The truth is coming out, whether NASA likes it or not. Drop a comment below. Do you think we should go back, or is the moon better left alone?